Hey, how's it going? It's Sam here, and in today's video I want to talk about 5 common mistakes that business owners make when running Google Ads. So over all of the accounts I've looked at and sort of audited and worked on in the past, these are some of the more common mistakes I'll see business owners make, especially when they're running their own Google Ads. So the first mistake that I see business owners make with their Google Ads is not understanding the difference between a keyword and a search term for Google search ads, and not as an extension of this, understanding the match type system within Google Ads. So it's very common for do-it-yourself advertisers, people who are new to the platform, to go in and create a search campaign and plug in a whole bunch of keywords that they think are what their customers might be searching for, or prospective customers might be searching for, and not understand that the keywords you input as an advertiser are not necessarily the actual searches that a user makes in Google. So you might input a keyword like red widget for sale, and depending on how you've set up your campaign and your match types for that particular keyword, you might actually find that your ad shows for someone searching for DIY red widget tutorial. So you're selling a product and you're paying for someone to click on an ad that they think is going to take them to a tutorial for making something for free or for a whole lot less cost. And that's not likely to turn into a good sale or a lead for your business. So it's really important to understand that the keywords you supply to Google and the search terms that users make that trigger your ads to run, they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing at all. And depending on the match types you use, so whether you use broad match or phrase match or exact match keywords, it's really going to have a huge impact on how precisely the search terms, which are what the users are searching in Google, match the keywords which are what you've provided to Google. And Google is a bit naughty in my books in the sense that they'll push you towards using broad match keywords, which allow Google the greatest amount of leeway in terms of interpreting those keywords and matching them to user searches. Whereas if you look at using, say, phrase match, which is a really good balance between kind of controlling the precision of the search while still giving some expansion capacity, so you don't have to think of every conceivable search that a prospective customer might make. If you use phrase match, you kind of cut down a lot of the risk of having your ads run on irrelevant terms, but at the same time, you're not actually cutting out too much potential search volume as well. Whereas if you say went to exact match, unless you really know what you're doing, you might find that with an exact match keyword list, you're leaving a whole lot of potential business on the table because you haven't thought of all the different searches that a user can make. So the first thing to understand and the first mistake to avoid is that keywords and search terms are not the same thing. You need to know how to go into your Google search ad campaigns and look at the search terms reports. You need to understand what the different match types are and how to use them. This is really, really critical, because if you don't, what you can wind up with is a scenario where you've got a list of keywords and you think that's all your ads are running for, and then someone comes and shows you the search terms report and it turns out that 50, 60, 70, 80% of your spend has been wasted on terms that have no relevance to your business or aren't going to convert to leads and sales. And that's not a good thing. It's a whole waste of money. So make sure you avoid that mistake. The second most common mistake that I see with Google Ads when small business owners are running their own ad accounts is not using negative keywords. So you've got all the normal positive match types, broad match and phrase match and exact match and so on. But you also have negative keywords, and this is basically where you say to Google, hey, if a search contains the following word or phrase, I don't want my ad to run. And so when you use the search terms report to review the search terms that are actually triggering your ads to run and generating clicks and basically costing you money, you should be looking out for words or phrases that are effectively irrelevant to what you're offering or indicating a low quality search. So for example, if you're selling a product or a service but people are looking for jobs and apprenticeships and applications for employment, which is really common in, say, trade businesses, like you're running ads for Auckland plumber, but you've got a whole lot of searches coming through for Auckland plumbing jobs and plumbing apprenticeship Auckland and so on, maybe because you haven't got your match type set up correctly and your keywords are not really configured right. You could use negative keywords for jobs, employment, training, apprenticeship, college, university, anything like that. Those would be example negative keywords that you could add to your ad group or campaign, or even to the account, and then apply them across your campaigns to avoid the wrong searches effectively triggering your ads. So make sure you understand what negative keywords are and how to use them, and then use the search terms report as well as just your general understanding of the industry and your prospective customers to prevent your ads from showing for irrelevant searches by aggressively using those negative keywords. So if you don't sell secondhand product, for example, and you know that anyone looking for a secondhand product is very unlikely to convert and purchase from you, you'd add negative keywords for things like used or secondhand, just to block those searches from running. So if you're selling red widgets and someone searches for used red widget, they won't see your ad and they won't click, and it won't accrue any cost that isn't likely to convert to a lead. The third mistake that I see business owners make with Google Ads is not using the full suite of ad extensions, which are actually been named assets recently. So ad extensions or assets are basically extra things you can add onto your ads in Google. So you obviously provide Google with your keywords and your ad copy, talking about search ads here, but you can add on these extensions or assets, which are things like call numbers. So if you want people to call you, they'll see your phone number in the ad, and if they're on a mobile device, they can click on that phone number and dial through. You can add site links, which are links sort of deep into the site. So you might have your ad copy linked to the landing page, but you might also want to include links to your contact page, your about page, your special offers page. We could do all of that with site links. You can use things like structured snippets to list the types of products or services you offer. You can even upload images into your ads. There are a whole load of different extensions or assets that you can set up, and it's a really common mistake that I see business owners make who are running their own Google Ads, who'll go in and set up the ad copy but never use any extensions or assets because it's really an extra level of work that's involved, and they might not know where to go to set this up. But when you set up your ad extensions and assets correctly, what it does is adds effectively more quality to your advertising. It makes Google's job easier in terms of presenting your ads to prospective clicks, to prospective customers, and that could actually result in getting a higher click-through rate, lower cost per click, more conversions, and overall sort of enjoying a better performance out of your Google Ads advertising, particularly with search ads. So make sure you look at the list of ad extensions or assets that are available in your account and go through and set them up to the best of your ability, because that is really going to help improve the performance of your advertising and might actually lower the cost you're paying per click and reduce your conversion costs as well. Now, speaking of conversion costs, the fourth mistake that I see business owners make with their Google Ads is not using conversion tracking. So with Google Ads, you can set up conversion tracking numerous different ways, but primarily you'll do it either using the Google Ads tag, or you could do it using Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, or Google Analytics 4, which is the new version that's being released, sort of rolled out at the moment. And what you can do is you can set up your conversion tracking and then effectively bring that data into Google Ads. Now, conversion tracking can kind of be whatever you want it to be. So if you're running an e-commerce store, like a Shopify store, obviously you're going to want to track people making purchases and adding products to the cart and so on. If you're running more of like a service-based business website, it might be people filling out your contact form or your request a quote form. It can be anything you want, and depending on the business and how your website's set up and structured, it can be quite a process to work out exactly what you want to track. And sometimes business owners will go too far the other way and they'll have a whole lot of conversions set up that aren't really relevant. Things like people playing a video on the homepage, and 50% of all the visitors play the video, and you have this really high conversion rate, and that's not necessarily a good thing either. You want to strike a balance and think about the effectively commercially valuable outcomes that you want to see people take on your website. So filling out your forms, chatting on a live chat, requesting a quote, completing a transaction, those are things you want to track as conversions. Now, exactly how you do that's going to depend on what website you've got, which methodology you want to use, such as using the Google Ads tag or actually doing it in analytics and importing it back into Google Ads. You can leave a comment in the comment section of this video if you want any sort of more tailored advice to this, or you can go and Google the best way to do conversion tracking depending on what CMS or website you're using. So if you use Shopify or WordPress or Wix, it's going to differ depending on exactly what platform you're on. The key reason that conversion tracking is important, though, is that with conversion tracking, it basically does a couple of things. One is that it's going to give you a good understanding, or at least a decent understanding if you've set it up right, of how your ads are performing. So for example, if you're spending $1,000 every month on Google Ads and you're getting 10 leads that are worth $1,000 each from your Google Ads advertising, then effectively you're sort of 10xing your money, right? You've spent $1,000, you've effectively generated $10,000 in value for your business. Okay, that's a real oversimplification, but hopefully that makes sense. Equally, you want to see if you're running campaigns or activity that just isn't converting, it's not working for your business. With conversion tracking, you'll be able to see what's working and what's not. The other reason conversion tracking is important is that more and more Google's moving towards this kind of algorithmic, almost machine learning driven bidding and ad optimization system. Compared to the early days of Google Ads, there's a lot more manual. And so if you can feed in conversion data, it's easier for Google to take your ads and present them to people who are more likely to inquire or more likely to purchase or more likely to become a customer. They can cut down on showing your ads to people who are less likely to convert. So it's really helpful to have conversion tracking set up in your ad campaigns and in your account, because that's going to make Google's job easier to actually roll out your ads to the most relevant audience possible. Now, it's not a perfect system, and sometimes this machine learning aspect of Google gets it wrong, but definitely having conversion tracking set up is something you should do, and not having it is a big mistake in my opinion. And pretty much any website is going to be able to have some form of conversion tracked. It might take a bit of work to get it done, but it is well worth doing. Now, the final mistake that I see business owners make when it comes to Google Ads, and this is a really big one, is blindly trusting the recommendations that Google gives you. So when you go into your account these days, you'll see a whole lot of things like optimization score. That's where Google gives you a percentage out of 100, 100 being the max, of course, score of how well optimized a particular campaign is, or they might actually email you or call you and say, hey, we've audited your account and reviewed your account and we've got recommendations to share. Often that will come from someone calling themselves a Google Ads account strategist. Now, the problem with this is that Google's recommendations always work in Google's best interests, but they only sometimes work in your best interest. So it's very common, for example, for an account strategist to call you up and try and get a business owner on the phone and say, hey, you need to look at expanding your budget, or you need to look at changing your bidding strategy, or you need to look at going from phrase match keywords to broad match because you're limiting the amount of potential searches your ads are running on. The problem with that is that that may not work in your advantage. And what you might wind up with is a situation where your ads are showing for irrelevant searches. And the problem with that is that you wind up spending money and not generating any extra return. In fact, it might effectively cost you money for no gain whatsoever and be detrimental to your business. So don't blindly follow Google's recommendations. They play, in my opinion, a bit dishonestly on the sort of trust that the brand has, and the whole do no evil image that Google's built up over many years. And they use that to basically apply pressure to business owners who are running Google Ads who don't know better. And through the optimization score, through the account strategist outreach program, through those kind of recommendations they're giving you that are always going to typically result in Google getting more money. Sometimes they will result in better performance for your ads, but more often than not, that won't. And you want to actually take all of those recommendations and assess them independently against what you're trying to achieve and what your budget is, rather than just applying them blindly, because if you do, you're going to have a bad time. I've seen so many accounts that have been performing decently where someone set them up themselves and they've blindly followed Google's advice because they think it's the right thing to do, and it's not their fault. If someone in a position of authority tells you to do something, you'll often do it. And it's basically had a detrimental impact on the performance of the advertising account and cost the business owner a whole lot of money, and you're not going to get that back. So be careful, assess all of the recommendations Google gives you independently through the context of what you're trying to achieve. So hopefully you find that helpful. Just to recap some of those common mistakes that business owners make with Google Ads: not understanding the difference between match types and the difference between keywords and search terms, not using negative keywords to block irrelevant or poor quality terms, not using ad extensions or assets where possible to improve your advertising, not using conversion tracking or going too far down the other path and having everything on the website tracked as a conversion even when it's not really one, and that kind of mucks up Google's algorithm. And then finally, trusting Google's recommendations blindly. If you can avoid those mistakes, you'll find that you're going to do all right with Google Ads, as long as you kind of understand what it is you're trying to achieve with the platform and the basics of how to use it. If you've got any questions on this, please leave a comment below. You can email me, info@samfrost.co.nz. Please like this video, subscribe for more advice. I'll see you next time.